And yeah, so this is our 6th or 7th. I don't know how many weeks we've been cloistered, quarantined in our sheltering in our home. And so I talked to Rhonda early in the beginning, and we thought there was so much information going out, but there wasn't a lot on self-help and healing. And so Rhonda is an amazing healer. She was working on our Sanctuary Sundays. And so we got together and decided to do these events. And so Rhonda presented the first event with Creative Time. And so this
Creative Capital.
Creative Capital, sorry. And so Rhonda's an amazing person and amazing artist and amazing healer. And so she's now on her 3rd session. And if you want to, this is your 3rd one, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so if you want to see sessions 1 and sessions 2, those are on our website, 6018 North. And I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda to begin. Thank you so much again, yes, Rhonda, for being here. And thank you all for joining us in distant but close.
Yeah. You know, I always, when Tricia asks me to do something, I don't ask too many questions before I say, sure, what is it? Let me get involved. So I'm always happy to do anything with Tricia. And I'm so glad that we have this technology available. I'll start off by saying that, yes, I created this workshop initially as a 1-hour workshop for Creative Capital. And it was broadcast live through YouTube in late April. And one thing I'll say, a lot of people are tired of using Zoom for their meetings and teaching. I don't know about any of you, if you're teaching or doing things, everything's happening on Zoom. So many people don't like the format, have a lot of complaints about it. But let me tell you, when I did Creative Time, I was speaking into a void. I couldn't see any of the people who were present and participating. I couldn't see the chat. It would have been overwhelming, true, but at least I would have had some kind of interactivity, and I would have been able to see whether people were vibing with me. Because when you're in person, I always do these workshops in person, and yes, you can feel the energy in the room. You can see people's faces, and you always have that one person in a workshop who's going, yeah, or maybe some people start snapping if they hear something they like. But with, you know, I had none of that. And I was just looking at myself and speaking and hoping that people were, I didn't know if people were not understanding, and that was difficult. And I bring this up because being here and being able to see the faces, I appreciate Google Meet and Zoom so much. So I have not a single complaint about this format, because I know what it's like to not have to be the next level worse off. You know, sometimes you appreciate what you get when you had it worse before. So I'm happy to see, even if your name is on the screen or an avatar, I'm happy just to know how many people are present and to be able to say, do you have questions, and to be able to answer and engage and interact. So thank you all for being willing to show up. And I don't know how many people saw, well, I know Amy, I've seen you were here last time, 2 weeks ago, but not the first one. I do try to give a brief recap. I won't go spend too much time on it, but this 3-part, I've broken down my original 1-hour Creative Time workshop into 3 parts, which means I can dive deeper into every section. There's room for some interactivity. I'm not the know-it-all person, so other people might have some things, some wisdom, something to chime in with. Hello there, if you're just joining, thanks for being here. So if you have something to add, I try to, you know, take enough time to stop and let someone, you know, ask a question, make a comment, share an experience. If I don't leave time, you have something to say, please don't hesitate to hit that unmute button and to just share. We're a small enough group to do that. But I'll be sure to be asking. And if you have questions or comments, don't be shy. Please join in, because someone else, I have seen people who are hesitant to share something, and they did, and it ended up changing someone else. It really benefited other people. So you might be getting something off your chest and helping someone else. So today's primary focus is the concrete actions, activities, and things that you can do to stay grounded, to deal with physical, like your physical tension, stress, anxiety, and then to get yourself into working if you're an artist who feels a little bit blocked and you don't know what to do. That's today. We're going to talk specifically about concrete things you can do. And I expect people have something to add. So in case I can't think of everything, but I'm sure you all have some tactics and a toolbox of your own maybe you can share. But to backtrack, the first week I talked about the fact that when I started doing these workshops, I'm an artist. I make artwork that's about healing, transformation, and I used to make paintings. And when I switched to sculpture, I said to myself, I don't feel comfortable just putting a sculpture about personal development, transformation on a pedestal and walking away. I want to share more than that, share more of myself. So I would do performances where I read from my journals. I would do engaging activities like group oracle, where I showed everyone, yes, you have intuitive abilities. Let's put them out there. Let's use them. And then I would do workshops on dealing with self-doubt, whether you're an artist or an entrepreneur. Workshops about journaling to gain better self-awareness, and other topics like manifesting. And one of the things that I always deal with, self-doubt always comes up. And so I learned a lot about people, about our community. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of us artists are dealing with the feeling that we're not good enough, our work is not good enough. A lot of people have blocks, and we're all feeling like there's always this period of transition. We're always becoming something, and it can be really tough. And then people have imposter syndrome, and that's before the pandemic. So the point of talking about all of this now is, now we're dealing with the pandemic, and what happens when people aren't out there in the world being able to indulge in all their distractions, whether it be a busy schedule or a hectic social life, and or indulging in food and drink in ways that we can't now. A lot of times that ends up magnifying some of the issues that we have. So we're confronted head on with them. And then there's a lot of grief as well. People are dealing with grief collectively. It's a collective trauma, and there is grief. Some people are feeling other people's pain. Some people are losing friends, losing family, losing people they admire, and it is tough. And some people try to hide from that, some people don't acknowledge it, and it can be frustrating when people around you are talking about other things or endangering other people, and you're suffering a loss. And everybody's dealing with a different thing. So, and while I could talk about being compassionate for other people, our main purpose is being compassionate with ourselves here, the main purpose of this workshop, or this conversation, as I'll call it. So the main takeaways from the last couple of weeks were, number one, how do you find a sense of balance and equilibrium when you're dealing with the regular issues, but in the midst of a pandemic? We want to, one, not deny how we're feeling, because negative feelings, they happen. You don't want to fall into toxic positivity thinking, oh no, I'm feeling bad, that's bad, I shouldn't feel this way, and we try to hide it. No, we want to confront it, deal with it, don't deny it. But then don't judge yourself for feeling it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just be compassionate, be easy on yourself, and then you can begin to work on it. And then if you want to get more in depth in those things, I believe the first two workshops are still available, but I just wanted to make sure I gave a prelude to, because I don't want to just dive into part 3 without any deeper context. 2 weeks ago, the second session, I just talked about artists and their level of productivity, and how if we look on social media, you'll see people saying things like, oh, you should be so productive, you should use this time to write your novel and build Rome in a day, and all these ambitious things, where some people need to rest. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. You need to be self-aware. Some people are looking outside of themselves for answers and direction about what to do. I say look inside yourself first and foremost. You can get ideas from other people. And some might ask the question, well, I don't know, how do I know? And we talked about journaling as a way to gain self-awareness so you can gain a real understanding of what you need. And I gave 3 examples of different artists and how they might be dealing with the pandemic. One artist might be making tons of work, but they're feeling extra tired, more tired than usual. Another artist might be feeling a little bit unproductive, and then they're judging themselves based on what other artists are doing on social media. The third artist is completely blocked. And then I looked at what those artists might be accomplishing through journaling, what they might be discovering about themselves through journaling. The first artist just might realize, hey, I'm working a lot, I'm producing, that's healthy for me, it's coming from a healthy place, I'm truly passionate about what I do, but I'm feeling extra tired. I think I'm carrying fatigue because of the emotional heaviness of what's going on, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of rest. The second artist might be discovering that they've tied their identity a little bit too tightly to their art career. And when people do that, they feel like I'm not worthy unless I'm working. So they're trying to work just as hard as artist number one, but for very different reasons that are not as healthy. And they also were competing with other people, comparing themselves with other people because they were on social media. And I will talk about social media and different ways we can use it in today's discussion. So this artist decides to take a break from social media and do some journaling and explore concepts that they had personally put to the side in the past because maybe they were trying too hard to live up to what they thought other people would like as opposed to doing what they wanted to. But this person can discover this through journaling. And the third person, if I can find the notes, artist number 3 was completely blocked and procrastinating. And they realized that they're a worthy human being, whether they make art or whether they never make art again. They realized that they were a perfectionist and they were like this all or nothing person. If they couldn't have a 100% guarantee that their art would be perfect and that everyone would love it, they would never start making it. And instead of judging themselves, they decided to take advice from someone they saw on social media or take a cue from someone who was very prolific, who they saw on social media, who would put up the process of their work. And they would be meticulous in their step-by-step documentation of their process. And this person was comfortable with the unknowns and they decided to learn from that person. So this is an example of someone who was maybe comparing themselves to others in an unhealthy way, but then they decided to learn from it. And I'll note that the journaling process, it can take hours, it can take days, it can take weeks of self-examination and self-discovery to come to these conclusions. But that's just the quick overview. And I ended up saying something about how if your heart moves you to create 9 hours a day, and if that feels healthy to you right now, great. You just have to listen to your body, listen to yourself. If you feel like slowing down, do it. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that if you're not moving and hustling and constantly creating that you're not growing, because a lot of growth happens in stillness. So that was 2 weeks ago and the first week. And I just wanted to just take a breath and open up and see, did anybody who was here last time or here the first week or the second session, if you had any insights, if you had anything you wanted to share, or from that really quick overview, if you had anything you wanted to share with the group or any questions about any of that information. Go ahead and push your mute if you're thinking about it. I see anybody. I want to give people a chance before I see a smile. Yolanda, are you thinking about saying something? Okay. I noticed the one thing about doing these things online, people take a lot more time to think about whether they want to say something. So I take a lot more time to give people a moment to come in and say something. I will take some more breathing breaks and give room for people to jump in and say something. So if you want to say something about the earlier portion, it doesn't matter if you get off topic, but it just matters to me if you feel comfortable speaking up, that you feel comfortable and welcome sharing and chiming in today.
I would say something about the last session.
Oh, please do. Thank you.
It was super helpful because it kind of helped me see the big picture of what's going on and where I am really in the house. My studio's in the house, so I'm very lucky in that regard. But I was really focusing on, I'm a college art instructor, so I was really focused on that, and kind of seeing the big picture reminded me, hey, I'm not creating right now. It's cool. That's actually normal for me. When classes end, I'm more productive anyway. So it kind of helped me see the bigger picture rather than seeing, I've noticed that the people that I see that are posting on social media are people my teacher's age, kind of older, and these masters like posting their work. And I was like looking at them going, they're awesome. Why aren't I making anything? When it helped me to reflect that this is a normal rhythm of the academic year for me. And it's totally normal to not really make it much at that time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that dives, I'm so glad that you, even though it was something that had to do with last week, it dives right into the conversation this week. So I'm looking at, if everyone can see the comments, is that, who's saying that? Is it Hana? Did you put that comment? I don't know how to get the comment back up. Okay, let me look at the chat. Successful. Do you mind if I read it? If I read it out loud, are you okay with that, Hana? It says, I've been successful during this bizarre time by making sure I stick to a routine. My studio closed March 1st, unfortunately, but I established a strong art practice this way for 5 years. Staying true to it has helped immensely. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about routines. Thank you for saying that. I'm trying to see, did I miss anything else in the chat? No, I don't think so. But thank you so much for sharing that information. I'm not a routine person. I'm a Pisces. It's like I don't have, other than getting up at some point every day. But I think it's really healthy for someone to bring in that perspective of very organized people who get a routine. And then Timothy says a routine is good, and then if you fall off, it is okay. Absolutely, it is okay, especially
I'm not
now.
organized, Rhonda, but it's the only. Even if I sit at my desk and do nothing, the fact is I'm out the door, I'm up, and exactly the same time helps me feel a little more productive, even if I'm not. It's the only thing I can say has kept my sanity.
Right. And I hope that I don't come across as someone who's saying this is the way for everybody, because my main point is do something to find what's right for you. And I think journaling is a great way to do that, but I try to leave room. I mean, I'm biased towards writing because I have a master's in writing. I'm a professional writer. I love writing. I've been journaling since I was, 4th or 5th grade. I made my first journal by stapling together a bunch of notebook paper. So it is my jam, and it's my personal therapy. I have solved so many problems. I've discovered things about myself. I write down my dreams, and it has made a world of difference for me. I heal through my journals. I have intuitive insight. So many great things happen, but that doesn't mean it's the same for everybody. So, but I do feel like if someone can identify with what I'm saying, maybe there's another path. Like some people go to therapy, and journaling can be a nice way to a nice accompaniment to therapy. Then there's also doing it by video. Some people are traumatized by English classes or writing papers in school and getting red marks or teachers criticizing them on their papers. And they don't like the idea of writing at all, no matter what. And I try to help people get over that trauma and realize that this is writing for yourself. It's a completely different thing, but some people don't want to do that. So you can do videos, you can do audio, you don't have to do journals. And there are different ways to journal. I'm teaching an art journaling class right now at Hyde Park Art Center, and you can make marks on a page to let go of anger. There's some things that there are no words for, and you can get the emotions and energy. I call journaling a way of moving energy. And sometimes you're just letting something work through you by moving, making marks. And I think next week I'm going to try to show in that journaling class these pieces of art I made in college, because I was an artist since I was a baby in diapers. And I made art and when I was angry, and I still have these pieces with oil pastel, and they look angry. The colors don't look angry, but the strokes look angry. And that I realized, wow, nobody taught me to do that. I just went to it on my own. But there's so many ways. It doesn't have to be journaling just because I say, oh, it works for me. And I think it would work for some people who are reluctant to try it, but I don't believe in forcing people. And so videos and audio conversations with yourself, anything that keeps the thoughts from going around and around in circles and that helps you move forward is a good thing. Some people might need to work in a garden or play with clay, and it's about getting the energy out, and ideas come. Taking a walk, taking a run, those are all really good things. But I wanted to just share about my own way of making art. This would frighten so many people. I go long periods of time and I don't make art. As a kid, I was like that. Sometimes I would spend weeks or months playing the piano. I taught myself to play piano, and I played by ear, and it took a long time to learn really complex songs like ragtime pieces by Scott Joplin. I would listen to and learn, and I was very passionate about that. And I would go forever without making a drawing, and I didn't care. As an adult, when you're trying to make an art career, sometimes it's a little bit, you get caught up in, oh, you always have to be productive, you always have to be showing something or else people will forget you. But I think I shared in another session that I stopped making art for several years. And it was because it was after losing my father. And I thought that that was the reason, that it was grief. But I later discovered, no, it wasn't grief. I was transforming. And when I came out on the other side, and I didn't know there was going to be another side to this, I thought, wow, I'm not interested in making art. I'm not interested in looking at art. I used to be an art fair junkie. I didn't want to go to art fairs. I didn't care. And it could be an extremely scary time, but I just said, you know what? I'm going to say, maybe I'm not an artist anymore. And that's why it's important to and separate the identity and your self-worth as a human being from what you do. Because what if you end up needing to shift into something else? You don't want to try to force yourself to keep doing something if you're meant to transition. If I would have tried to block that transition, I might not have started making the work that I did start making several years later, in which it was more fully expressive of who I am. It was much more authentic to who I am. And I needed that break in order to go through the internal transformation to get there. So sometimes a break and a block doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean something's wrong. It means something else is transforming and trying to emerge within us. So not every block is a negative. That's one thing to think of it. And if there's a pandemic going on, we need to be extra gentle with ourselves and just remind ourselves, hey, why am I pushing myself so hard? There are people coming to me talking about art shows that are happening, and I have no interest right now in producing art for art shows. I'm just not interested, and I am so okay with that. And I'll share this also. Sometimes you don't even realize that you have a healthy perspective that's helping someone else, but in 2014, I started to come back into the art world. I started to become interested in art. 2010 is when I stopped, or it was like 2011. I stopped. So 2011, 2012, 2013, I stayed out. I wasn't making art 3 whole years. And I might have been showing old work, but my heart was not in it. I tried to make something, it sucked. So I said, let me just take my hands off of this and stop pushing. But I started to get interested again. But 2014, I still wasn't making much work, but I was getting out in the art world, meeting new people, and I joined this little art group of maybe 5 people, and I was going to their studios and contributing to the conversation, but I didn't have art to show, and I didn't care. And my friend thought that was so weird and brave. We're like, wow, how could you go to other people's art studios and celebrate their art and you didn't have your own? And it didn't dawn on me that that would be a problem for someone. And that's when I knew I was in a pretty healthy place, because I didn't care if people knew I wasn't working on anything. I was just so joyful about being back, joyful about participating again, and willing to let myself grow at my own pace. And there is some magic in that, because when I was ready to start making art again, the opportunity popped up like magic. I heard almost a whisper in my ear one day to go through this door I usually don't go into. And I saw 2 of my friends having a conversation. One of them is a curator, and I just crashed their tea party. And lo and behold, they were talking about an exhibition that was perfect for everything I was planning to do. I told her, hey, I'm thinking about this new work. She didn't ask for proof. She didn't ask to see the new work. She believed me. And before I knew it, I was in the show. And when we were doing the panel, I didn't make the work yet. I hadn't made the work, so I would have had no proof. She trusted me. And then when you have this opportunity, it just put this motivation through me to make the work. Next thing I know, I'm in a panel discussion talking about the work. And the curator, I shared on the panel the magic of how I ended up in the show, because the little whisper said, go through that door. And she said, Rhonda, I couldn't imagine this show without your work in it. So sometimes when we try to force things, it doesn't work out. We should just surrender to some of these things that are happening. And there is a line between, there are parts of us that might be lazy and procrastinating. And that's why journaling helps us discover which one it is. Am I just making excuses for myself? Am I, or am I pushing too hard to make something happen? And I discover all those things by exploring them fearlessly in my journal. I wasn't afraid to see something like, oh, you're finished as an artist, because I knew something else would come from, something else would happen. So I hope it wasn't boring to hear that, but that's an important part of my journey that I like to share with people, just to say, hey, I had to be brave and say, maybe I'm not an artist, maybe I'm done with this. But it's like being a caterpillar in the cocoon transitioning into a butterfly. I don't know if the caterpillar really knows what's happening when it's turning to mush. Does it question? the process. And it's also very dark in that process. You can't see anything. And when people talk about darkness, I like to prefer, some people talk about darkness as a very painful period, as even using that term is like to reference evil. And I like to look at it a different way. When it's night, what happens? You can't see without lights. And I look at darkness as a period of unknown. And my biggest lesson from all of this is getting more comfortable with the unknown and just doing my best to find my way around, feel my way through it by being compassionate with myself. And again, it's a big lesson in not tying my identity to something and knowing that I have worth regardless of what I create in the world, and being confident enough to not worry about people judging me. And the other thing that came out of this, I started making work and did not care what people thought. I said, this is what I want to make. I'm not going to worry that people are going to think this is silly or ridiculous. I'm going to make this work, this artwork. And if nobody shows it, so what? I'm proud of myself because I was bold. And I did some stuff I thought was silly. You know, one of the things is if you're blocked, I'll tell you what, sometimes just getting into a playful place, getting in touch with your inner child is a great way to do it. I made one of the best pieces of work, my favorite pieces of work, because I started acting like a child and putting ridiculous things together. And what resulted was, I can show you the sculpture. It's this mannequin hand with the barnacle cluster. I have it. I'm going to grab it if you can give me a second. My place is really small, so I'll be right back. Yeah, this was the first sculpture I made. This is a mannequin hand. I did not make the hand, but it's, you know, I showed it in that exhibition where I walked in on the women having the tea party and crashed their tea party. This was the result of me being silly. This hand was unpainted and it was a mess. And I just took this big barnacle cluster and I was just being very playful, doing something ridiculous, and I clumped it on top because I was playing around. And I'm like, wait a minute. That could actually be something. So when I stopped being serious, when I stopped saying, let me try to make something that fits whatever is out there, that's when, you know, when I looked for evidence that something might be acceptable in the art world, that's when I really felt connected to the work in a larger way. And the results were great. So enough about my stories. Let's talk about what people can do. Some of you might not have this issue of being blocked and dealing with procrastination, but if you know someone else who is, maybe this can help. And I see there's some stuff in the chat, so at some moment I'm going to take a breath and read what you've written in there, because I would love to hear some people elaborate on some of it. But one of the most ridiculous things, fun things, one of the best things we can do is be a little ridiculous. So sometimes people are blocked because we are trying to be perfect. We're trying to make something work out a certain way. And a lot of people don't like the work they make because the thing that comes out doesn't match the vision in their head. But what about setting out to make some work of art, whether it's visual, sound related, written, just set out to purposely make something ridiculously awful. Something that sucks, an ugly painting, an aimless piece of work. And just, yeah, someone wrote, you know, I think that's Trisha writing in the comments about just allowing yourself to be silly. If you purposely set out to make an ugly painting and see how ugly you can make it, what might that do for your energy? What that might do, it takes all the pressure off and you let yourself see what it feels like to make something that way, and maybe something great will come out of it. I bet you, a lot of you, if not every one of you who is an artist or writer or some kind of creator, you would probably miserably fail to make something ugly. You'd probably have to try really hard to make something super ridiculously awful, but seeking to purposely make something that is abysmally bad could be a great exercise, number one, if you're feeling blocked, or if you're just tired of what you're doing. And or doing some artwork that people would say, oh, that's for children. Get some Play-Doh, get some model magic, do something that's oriented for children, finger painting. And sometimes that breaks you free when your hands are in something and you're not trying to be anything other than playful. it opens up channels for your thinking, and ideas that you were waiting for when you were trying too hard start to come through. So it works on multiple levels. It takes the pressure off. If you fail to make an ugly piece, you end up with a decent piece of work. But the point is, you move your energy, you get your hands in your material, you have a little fun, let off a little steam. So after all of that, I just wanted to take a moment to breathe and look at the chat. And if anyone wants to unmute and make a comment, please feel free to do so. I'm guessing
I have a comment. I've been going for walks and we're in Indiana and we're close to the beach and there's, for some reason, lots of chunks of asphalt lying around. And at first I started picking them up to discard them. And then I started looking and thinking, this is really interesting. Some of them had bizarre rock forms in them and all that. And so I started this collection, and I had pulled some things from my studio in Chicago down to this place where we are in Indiana. And they were ceramics that I had made 2 years ago at Hyde Park Art Center and never knew what I was going to do with them. And so then it was like just putting everything out and looking at materials and letting the materials kind of say, hey, I want to be with that piece. And, you know, that what you were talking about, the playful aspect. It's been very fun. And I'm like, it was serendipitous.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Bobbi. And I totally identify with that. Ever since I was little, I walk and I look at the ground and I find all these interesting things. And that just makes me think how whatever medium you work in, you could play in a medium that you don't acclimate towards, just play in something else, but like going outside and seeing what's out there. And asphalt, when you said that, I think about how I've always thought that fresh, brand new asphalt is gorgeous. There's something I really love about that, and the shapes. I'm with you. I can imagine that, you know. So thank you for commenting on that. I also pick up discarded bottles, and sometimes they end up being used in my artwork. And I sometimes pick up things that I might never use in the artwork, and I might have a use for it later. But there's so much interesting stuff on the ground. The way there's so much art made by accident, by splatters and splashes and the shapes of things. So thank you for mentioning that. Anyone else want to say something? Anyone else want to elaborate on something that they've put in the chat?
I can say something.
Who was, I didn't see who that was. Terrence, you go ahead. Your mic is on.
No, she can go ahead.
That was Yolanda.
Go ahead,
Yolanda.
Terrence.
Oh, yes, Yolanda.
Go ahead, Terrence. I'll go next.
I've been thinking a lot recently about detoxing, you know, from a lot that's been going on out here. And part of what I mean by detoxing is like really going inside and confronting a lot of stuff that we really haven't confronted and dealt with in this so-called society. If you take a break from working in the midst of sheltering and all that brings along with it, and, you know, trying to practice, you know, health safety, and you turn on the news to see what's happening out in the world, you're just confronted and bombarded with just tons of more racism, things that are happening in the news, violence, gun violence, all the issues surrounding COVID. And so I just think that, you know, just needing and trying to find ways to detox, you know, are very important, because a lot of these issues that we're dealing with seems like, I don't mean to be pessimistic here, it seems like they're not going to go away. Like, I think you kind of hit on this earlier in your intro. It's like it's a lot of pre-existing stuff that we've been dealing with. A lot of people on top of stuff that are happening now. A lot of stuff has been escalated because of what's happening now. So yeah, just needing to find ways of detoxing and protecting yourself as much as possible.
That's such an important important point. And I think detoxing can be mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And it can be hard for some people to physically detox because of accessibility. It can be hard for some people to do any of this because of accessibility to information and knowledge. But when it comes to the news and watching TV, and if you notice yourself feeling a certain way, on one hand, we do need to be informed. At the very beginning of this pandemic, I would cross paths with so many uninformed and misinformed people that I would say, oh, just stay away from anybody who's coughing. Because I was social distancing at the end of February, very beginning of March, and people were looking at me like I was bananas. And I'm like, no, we need to do this no matter what. And I said, there are asymptomatic people. There are so many uninformed people, misinformed, and then whatever we're getting from the CDC, they're still learning too. So, and everything's changing. So you want to keep up with what's going on, but if it's too much for you, then we have to know when to draw the line. We don't have to constantly keep CNN on our television. But I do have some information for the rest of the workshop that hopefully will deal with how we can do some more of that detoxing. But a lot of it might be personal, like detoxing. I talk about clutter clearing on my Twitter account, not my Rhonda Wheatley, but I have another account called Spark Elevation. And I talk about how we can declutter a lot of other areas of our life, like our social circle. If you have that one friend you talk to and they always bring you down, you are not required to talk to that one friend. You can cut conversations short. You can try to change the energy of a conversation if it doesn't work. You don't have to answer the emails of that one friend who is constantly down. But I hope that some of the things that I talk about later will help us deal with that. Because detoxing might entail getting off of social media the way you've been using it, or get off altogether. But I wanted to also get back to, my connection is unstable. Can everybody see me and hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just got a notice, but I wanted to return to Yolanda so you can make your comment.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, I'm a curator producer, so this always helps me keep perspective. My relationship with journaling is something that you touched on before, because I'm a non-English native speaker. So I am taking a corollary. My journaling is keeping up my calendar, literally putting in important details that matter to me and what I watched the other day and who I spoke with and stuff like that. So that's my sense of journaling. And my practice is walking. I live on the south side in Hyde Park, and I literally walk from my house all the way down South Shore and back, lakefront, looking at rocks and so forth, walking by Hyde Park Art Center. So that's when I kind of sort through what I was composing as a calendar. But I wanted to just immediately respond to what was just said. I so appreciate about the detox. I would suggest that it sounded to me, when I think about it, because I'm a contact tracer. It's one of the things that I got a certificate in, and just to feel like I was involved, but also just being part of something bigger than myself. That the detox also reminded me that there's a tendency that we have in the media and the technology encourages us to really concentrate on a certain source. So to just maintain our 360-degree view, including in the darkness, thinking about other ways that we can tune in with other sensations, such as our smell, which is magnified in the darkness. Other ways to just be present and know everything. You know, pivoting means that we have to take a half circle. So detoxing sounds to me like it's about just reminding ourselves of other ways that we can absorb better energy and get rid of what we have overconsumed.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I'm also your neighbor. I live a couple of blocks from the art center on the lake. So I might run into you when I get back. I don't go out much at all. So I'm taking care of an ill mother. So I limit my whatevers. I've probably been out 2 or 3 times since March. And that means two grocery store trips and maybe walking around my building in a circle a couple of times. That's it. So, but I'll see you in the neighborhood later at some point. And that's the other thing. We don't know when. We don't, like to Terrence's point, there's a lot of unknowns about when this is going to end, how long it's going to last. You got Trump saying it'll disappear like magic, and then other people saying this is going to be around for years. I don't think anybody knows. And that's what I remind myself whenever I hear this. We do not know. And it's really a lesson in getting comfortable with the lack of knowledge. We don't know the future. We really don't know. And having a very sick parent who has to go to dialysis 3 days a week, it would be great if she could stay in, but she absolutely can't. I've had to get comfortable with that and just make sure her face mask is on. She protests when I try to put it. I have to fight all kinds of battles, but putting her face mask on is one of them. And there were some other things you said, Yolanda, I thought were so valuable, and I don't have all of them in my head, but if they pop back up, I will reference them. But you said so many things of value, both you and Terrence. I appreciate those comments, and yeah, I'll think of them. They might pop up again because I have more stuff to say. Oh, you talked about the journaling, the using your calendar. One of the things about my journaling class that I'm really finding, I'm not teaching much about art technique, it's artful journaling. And one of the things that I find I'm doing is so many people in my classes, that whether I'm teaching art or a writing class like this, people want to know, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? And my biggest challenge as a teacher, facilitator, has been helping people free themselves of the shoulds. And I'm letting people be free to say, oh, if I just want to write one word on a page, that is my journal. And I've shown people all these alternative ways of journaling, and the calendar was one of them. What if you take, there are other types of mediums and practices that people have had, from scrapbooking and recipe collecting, and that you can turn that into your journal. And I showed an example of someone who took a calendar, and instead of writing down what you're going to do, you write down what you did do, the things you want to remember about that day. So I love that practice, and so many people think journaling has to be like a captain's log. Here's what I did today. But the whole thing I'm trying to do is help break people free of the limitations of what it is, and just say it could be. One thing I say is try not to censor yourself, because then if anything that you feel uncomfortable about writing or that you're tempted to not say is something you definitely have to examine, but maybe later. Maybe make a note. I feel so uncomfortable, and that happens to me. I feel so uncomfortable writing this right now, so that means I need to put a pin in it and look at it later if I'm not ready, or just if I can push myself to look at it now. But censoring is a big deal. So to not censor, and then to make it just something for yourself so you can get the most out of it, so that you don't end up writing for an audience that's not yourself. Because then you notice the difference between telling your day to another person versus how you tell it to yourself. Or if you're afraid someone's going to look at the journal, do you write it differently? Like, I always tell a story of my walking in and finding my sister with my journal, and she was asleep on top of it, and then when I woke her up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm in the right, there's no way she can get out of this, because she was the bratty little sister. And she wakes up and she's angry at me because the journal was so boring it put her to sleep. So, and I thought I had the best hiding place under the mattress, but no, I didn't. I was probably 14 or 15, and I still have that journal. But anyway, moving on to the other topics. So some people I wanted to talk about social media and how people might be judging themselves a little bit too much, or like if social media is getting on their nerves. And I did see something in the chat about, oh, thank you, Hana. Am I saying your name right? Is it Hana or Hannah? Hana, okay, thank you for your comments about my mom. And so someone asked about advice about peer jealousy. Why don't I have this grant or that grant? And I deal with that a lot in the self-doubt workshops. And this is something that can happen from social media. You see people winning, you see people doing all this stuff. And one of the things I tell people, like somebody just out of the blue who had never, ever written me a message before on social media or like through a direct message, sent me a message one day to say, I didn't get this grant that I applied for, and I'm really upset about it. And I just thought to myself, why would this be the very first thing this person ever writes to me, and we're not close friends? And I thought, because I have a good answer for him, that's why he wrote it to me. And my answer was, think about this. Every artist who you admire, every artist who you think is a great artist has a pile of rejections. It takes stacks and stacks of rejections to get to that level. And the other thing is, I just I kind of don't like the way the art world has these small amount of prizes and we all have to compete over them. So sometimes I like to take myself out of it, or when I apply for something, I just say, you know, I might not get this. I'm not going to put my heart in it like I need it, but I'm going to do my best. And I also say there are other benefits to writing a grant. I'm learning about myself. I'm fine-tuning the way I talk about my work. So I look at it as more than just trying to get some money. And I also have other income streams. But I'm like, you know what? It really takes some work to not feel envious. Some people only feel envious and upset about the artists who are mean and the artists who are just not good people. Like, why do they get it? And some people are just jealous no matter who gets it. And regardless of all of that, some of us might not ever get any type of award. Some people are going to get all the awards. And we have to work on ourselves so we're okay with it. I don't think there's a magic solution to it, but it is about putting things into perspective and just saying, do I really need, why do I need, like interrogate yourself, like, why do I need the validation from this place? Yeah, it feels good, it feels great. Some people don't get their validation until they're 100 years old. Look at Carmen, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, Herrera. She didn't start getting exhibitions until she was in her 90s, and she's, you know, had that big Guggenheim show after the age of 100. Nobody wants to wait that long, but it's just like, you have to be okay with yourself if you don't get third-party validation and recognition. It might not happen, but you still have to be like, I'm doing this work for a greater reason. We have to be doing our stuff for a greater reason. So getting healthy with ourselves, finding something healthy about why we do our work that is separate from external validation is so important. And just the only way to get around jealousy is to work on ourselves. Read books that help you get over it. Examine yourself and really look at what's going on there, because there isn't enough of, when it comes to awards, there are 10,000 people competing for 3 awards. Not everybody's going to get it. So we have to, it's only healthy to work on that. So there isn't a magic number. I mean, a magic solution for that. But when it comes to social media, some people can scroll through when you have one of those accounts where you know everybody and it's your circle. And there are people who, that person didn't call me back, or, you know, all these people. And every time you see someone, you think of something negative that happened in your last interaction, or you think of the envy feeling that you have. And if you find yourself doing that, maybe you're in a bad mood or something else didn't go right and everything's agitating you, you can take yourself out of that by, you know, logging off of that account. But you still might want to maintain your connection to the world. So here are a couple of ways to get around it, to still participate in the larger big picture of social media, but not have to see all the people who might have been mean, or someone who, you know, people you can unfollow people, you can mute people, you can silence people, but then you can also create an account. If you want to forget about that stuff for a while, forget about the art world, your career, your professional connections, you can create a whole different account. You can make a private account on Instagram and you can lock it. Nobody knows you're there. You can give it a name that has nothing to do with you. You can do it on your computer. You don't have to do it on your cell phone. And you can follow accounts that uplift you. It could be whether you like looking at baby goats or teacup pigs, or if you like looking at gardening stuff, you can make an account where you only look at the stuff you love, and just notice how pleasant you feel when you look at it. Any teacup pig account that starts putting up stuff about politics, if you don't want to see politics, you can unfollow. So taking control of your social media, that's one way to do it. If you want to, like if you use Twitter, you can still have your main account, but you can create lists. That's a feature on Twitter that a lot of people are not aware of. You can also do a private account on Twitter, but the list feature allows you to create groups of accounts that you put together. And when you click on one of your lists, you can make it private so no one else can see it, or you can make it open and people can subscribe to it. And basically, you can make a list of only political accounts, or only funny, hilarious accounts, or only accounts about love and relationships, or about art, whatever it is. And you can escape from the worlds you don't want to see. And that's the thing about Twitter. It tends to be less about the people you know and more about the world. I have friends on Twitter in Pakistan, UK, everywhere. They're mostly strangers. And the people who I personally know, they either don't follow me back or never engage on Twitter with either of my accounts. And if you want to follow me, I have an account on Twitter called Spark Elevation, all one word. And that's where I put a lot of my positive stuff or personal development, relationship type information. And I have a Rhonda Wheatley where I retweet that stuff. The other thing you can do is use the Instagram save feature, and you can save like category, make collections so that you have a whole collection of a certain type of post. And you can name them like, oh, these are all the hilarious memes I've seen, or hilarious posts, or these are posts that encourage and inspire me. And then you can spend some time scrolling through those if you want to change your mood. Now, speaking of changing your mood, one of the best things you could do, and Terrence, this goes back to detox. A great way to detox is to put yourself in a space that is going to induce a lot of laughter. You can, get on Netflix or Hulu or whatever it is if you watch television or YouTube, and just watch funny TV shows. And what happens is your endorphins get going, your mood lifts, your immune system increases. And then there's also making sure your magnesium levels are good, because sometimes that brings us down if we're not getting enough of the right vitamins and minerals. And I notice people who don't have enough vitamin D, there's vitamin D3. If you want to take vitamin D, make sure it's D3. And then magnesium. Some people's moods are impacted by the lack of proper minerals, but then laughter is great because endorphins, the same stuff we might want to get from eating chocolate, we can get from laughing. It also raises your vibration, so your energy will be bubbly, and you just feel there's a downness. If you start watch certain things on television, you'll notice your energy might feel bleak, but laughter will lift you up. And there's some comedies though that are more sad and tragic than funny, so I'm careful about some of those, because I'm watching some comedies, I'm like, this is a lot more sad than it is funny. So maybe something you've seen before that you're going to get some more laughs out of. I don't know what good comedy is for everybody else, but I know for me, I like to, I'm not even going to share what I like to watch, but we all can make our lists. But making a collection of funny posts can be great on Instagram. I don't know if everybody uses that save feature, but if you don't even want to look at your feed, you can also look at the explore feature, and you can avoid looking at some of the posts that you're used to seeing. You can also look at your saved collections. And if you might want to look at home decor, things that make you feel good, whatever it is that makes you feel good. You can plan for the future as well. You can think about what you're going to do when things return to, I don't know what we're going to return to, or if it's a return to anything, but when things get to a space where you can do the things you used to do, you might do some future planning. When as soon as I can do whatever, here's what I'm going to do. And that's a good way to write in your journal. And you can even do some future journaling. Like I talk about how we can manifest our future. And I'm not saying if you write down August 8th, the world is back to normal, that it's going to happen. I'm not saying we can magically manifest those things, but there are times when I have written in a journal and I'll put a date 5 years from now and write down as though I'm living in that future. And sometimes I find that that's helpful. Sometimes the issue with us is we might be just too much up here, too much in our heads. And there are several things we could do. Yolanda talked about taking a walk. Taking a walk brings you back into your body because you're moving it, and your thoughts change when you walk or run. Sometimes that's the reason why that's a substitute, or not a substitute, but like an alternative way of journaling, is that your thoughts really change. People get so much clarity when they run and when they walk. It's not for everybody. Not everybody can physically do that. I don't run. But when I walk, it's like a walking meditation that is a lot like journaling, but it's physical and it's grounding. It brings you into your body when you're way too much in your head, too many thoughts, too much swirling around, a lot of anxiety. Anxiety, I mean, some people need to go and talk to a professional, but if you have a kind of anxiety that you can deal with, these are just some ways to do it. Grounding, you can stay home and you can just imagine that you're sending all of the energy that's too much up here. Imagine that a lot of that energy is coming down. You're sending it way down into the body. And even imagine that if you know the chakra system, you take your root chakra and send that energy deep into if you're in an apartment, like I'm on the 21st floor, I'm not limited by that. I can still send my energy into the earth. I can envision that I have roots like a tree growing from my feet, my legs down into the earth. And you'll start to feel more a heavier feeling, more magnetized to the earth. And if you do have access to the outdoors, you can get near a tree and even ground next to a tree, or do something what they call earthing. Some people call it forest bathing, but I don't know how many of us are near a forest. But earthing is when you take your shoes off and you connect directly with earth. And I'm not talking about concrete and asphalt. I'm talking about dirt and grass, and really feel your connection to the earth. It can be very healing for people to do that. Yes, so connecting with the earth, if you can get outdoors. And I try to recognize that everybody has different access. So yes, and another thing, if we're feeling tense, there is such a thing as binaural beats. And it's brain entrainment where you can use these beats, like, you know how those, what is it called, a pentameter? When you're trying to keep up with a beat when you're playing music, if you put two of those next to each other, they sync. They might be out of sync, but eventually they will sync up. The brain waves works in the same way. If we put something with the kind of brain waves we were looking for, like delta waves can help you relax. Alpha waves can help you focus. There are different purposes for different waves. There are waves that can help you meditate. You can find these on YouTube. I don't know if you can buy too many CDs anymore, but I do have CDs that have binaural beats, or hemisync is what some people call them. But those are good. And there are also tons of guided meditations. There's meditation music. You might not need that technology. I'll tell you what though, if you put often with binaural beats, you have to put the right headphone ear. Headphones is the best way to use them. And you have to have the right ear in the right headphone in the right ear, the left headphone, because if you match them, it can make you feel really wonky. But so that's the only thing you have to be careful about. But there are lots of other relaxing, soothing videos. Some people try ASMR. I don't know what that stands for, but it is that practice where there are people on YouTube who make these videos where their voices are so calming and soothing, and they're making these sounds. And it's like therapy for some people. Some people use it to go to sleep. They might be taking a hair comb and a piece of paper and slipping it over with a high-powered microphone. And that sound is very therapeutic for some people. Other people watch slime videos. There are things that are visually pleasing, or watch pictures of people cutting cake. Those kinds of things like put people in a different mood. It sounds so simple, but it really helps a lot of people. And then some people are just saying beautiful words, beautiful poetry. There's meditation music. All of that can help bring us into a different mood. And then there's the other thing that I noticed in the art world. So many people they think TV is bad, and I hear something, oh, I don't have a TV, I don't watch TV. And I'm like, I have a big TV and I watch it all the time. I watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer reruns, and I'm a big TV watcher. And sometimes just letting ourselves indulge in some mindless TV can really be therapeutic. And I notice a lot of people are so intellectual that they don't let themselves have fun with mindless, silly things. And I mean, there's the silliness in making art, but then your intention is to eventually make great art later. But what if you just have no intention? You just want to veg out and watch some mindless, fun television. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some people, I kind of got a little, what do you call it? I used to be into, foreign films in my 20s, but then later I'm like, it's okay to watch Godzilla. It's okay to have fun. I love the Marvel movies, and I forget about the world when I lose myself in some of these TV shows. It's a lot of fun, and then it could be fun to have some friends to talk with about it. Yes. What else is on my list? Oh, I mentioned Bob's Burgers on my list. That is a hilarious show. It's on Hulu, it's on Fox. And that's one of the ones. So you don't have to watch cable news all day. You want to stay informed a little bit. And sometimes it can make a difference to read the news, because you don't have to read every word, rather than to listen to the television, where you're taking it in more passively. When you read, you can pick and choose how much you can stop reading an article past the headline and just get the headline. I go on Twitter and get headlines every day from what's trending. So yeah, that's that. And I think I'm pretty much done with everything that I had to say here. And I will leave you with something from another workshop before we start. I'll open up to anybody who has questions. But breathing is something I brought up before, but our breathing is one of our best ways out of anxiousness, tension, worrying, and stressing. And that's one of the best ways to get back into the body as well, when some of us are too much in our heads. And I also talked about how breathing is a way to bring ourselves back to the now, because a lot of times when we're worrying, when we're anxious, we are, depression often can be you're concerned with or worried about things that have already happened, and anxiety is worrying about things that haven't happened and might not happen. And then how do we get back in the now? And I always comment on how people, like, a lot of spiritual gurus and teachers will say, focus on the now. And you might have heard me say it before if you were here last time. It is so hard to do that. So I don't tell people to just bring it back to the now. That's like telling someone to snap out of it. How do you get to the now? And I think breathing is one way to do it. And a lot of these physical things like gardening and squishing clay, those things are very helpful for bringing it to the now. But I think breathing is great because not only is it bringing oxygen into our system, not while we're wearing a mask and we're out in the crowd of people, of course, but when we're in a space, maybe under a tree or maybe in our homes where it's secure to do that. But just taking a deep breath and going all the way into the lower belly, which should poke out. People breathe deeply and their bellies go in, it should go out. Then you fill up the lower lungs, because our lungs have a lot of capacity. Then we fill up the upper lungs, maybe hold it for a second, and let the out breath be twice as long if you can. And just do that a few times and try to hold on to a negative thought while you're doing that. And notice how difficult it is when you're really focusing on the body. For me, that's one of the best ways to focus on the now. And I will leave it at that. But I noticed some people have run. I didn't get to say bye to everybody, but if anybody has to run, I will stay here for a few moments to answer questions, or if anybody wants to make another comment, please do feel free to unmute and share your thoughts or ask a question. I mean, I don't have all the answers. If you want to answer a question, go ahead. So let's see some mics unmuting. I'm looking at the chat while I wait for people to talk. You don't have to talk, no pressure, but if you want to say something, please feel free. I'm going to stick around. I'm not going to leave till, I'll leave eventually, but because I got to get my mom. But thank you for the compliments, those of you who are still here that left them. I appreciate it. Yes, Hana, you said it's nice to be connected especially while we are isolated. I definitely appreciate this technology that we're able to. I mean, I've been using it several days a week. I'm teaching teens, I teach the journaling class, and then I was doing this every other week. So I'm so grateful. Oh, and that's another thing, practicing gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Journaling lists of things that we're grateful for.
And it's so interesting because you touched on so many things that have been helpful personally, but they just words, just something like breathing. I remember people telling me this, but it actually has a physical reaction, right? To calm you down. And journaling is another way to get in touch with what you're really thinking and venting. The idea of being connected to others, doing something good for someone, or going out in nature. All these things.
Yeah, that's something I didn't bring up. I don't think I brought up, but doing something nice for someone like Yolanda. I was wondering, Yolanda, if you started doing contact tracing, like, is that a skill that you already had, or did you just get certified for that now? Because that's an example of doing something nice for everybody.
So I'm a native Spanish speaker, and I have the privilege of traveling a lot. So I'm in touch with the disaster in Madrid and in Rome. That's where all my family is. So I just heard that Johns Hopkins University was doing a course, and a month ago I registered just to learn what it means to be a contact tracer, because Europe is about a month ahead of the US.
Yeah.
as far as returning to whatever social existence looks like anymore. So I was projecting, where are we going to be in 2 months? And so, and at the moment, you know, it's all about just communicating and listening, a lot of listening, but also getting down to facts, sort of like what I do with my calendar, getting information out of people in specifically La Villita, where there are a lot of non-English speakers. So that's a kind of practice that I'm doing. And I also, as someone registered with the Department of Health, I have like first information about what might be coming next. And I feel that that makes me a better curator and producer, because I can share that with a lot of different artists that have lots of different situations.
Right. That's really big. Thank you for doing that. That's awesome, Yolanda. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing it. And, you know, that's really big. And some people feel like, well, what can I do? And I think what Hana made a point also, there's something small that someone could do. Like in my building, there are tons of seniors here in the building. And if, you know, maybe I've seen some people helping them bring things up because they don't have the same ability to get things delivered right to their door because they're not letting as many people upstairs. So there are folks helping with that, checking in on people. You might know one person. Yolanda is able to do something for large groups of people and taking on a whole new skill. But we all make a difference if we do something for someone else.
Rhonda, I wanted to mention something. I wanted to talk about or inject, I don't know how to call it, social justice and human rights art, which has been in the work of countless numbers of artists for centuries. And when we were talking about therapy, or even detoxing for that matter, even that can bring maybe a certain amount of healing. You know, the type of art that we do. Art as being healing once again. Art as being social justice once again. And not taking the mind off of the realities of life. You know, maybe some people feel comfortable in saying, hey, I'm just going to create some art to take me away from what's happening. But I want to bring you back and say, there's another kind of art that is therapeutic, that deals with the social realities that we're dealing with. And that's all I'm trying to emphasize.
Right. Yeah, I teach a class at IUPUI, which is Indiana Purdue University, and I talk about this artist Titus Kafar, who, you know, he makes artwork that deals with social justice. And whenever we see artists who do that, when they talk about it, it's therapeutic for them, or it's a way of dealing with something that happened, like his father being in prison and he wanted to find his father at some point. His father's name was Jerome. He ended up doing this Jerome project, making images of all these men who he found named Jerome when he was looking for his father. And that was therapeutic. He also does a ton of other different types of art. One of the hands up pictures that ended up on this cover of Time magazine, that was his work. And so some people might think that people who focus on social justice art are focusing on the negative, but sometimes it's the only way people can deal with it, because if they keep it inside, it becomes damaging to the physical body. Getting it out, it might inform someone else, it might teach someone else, bring something to the attention of other people who are paying attention. But then for the person who's making the art, it's a way of dealing with the pain of social injustice that's happening to them personally or in their communities around them. So thank you, Terrence, for bringing that up. That's another important part. And I do always say that if a person feels like that is the art they are called, whatever art you feel called to do, you should, do that. Do the art that you feel called to do that's coming from within. There are too many people who stop themselves because they think if they want to do social justice art, they may say, oh, I don't want to be controversial, or they might hide it, or instead of being loud with it. And then there might be a person who thinks, I should do social justice art because I'm a person of color, or I'm this from this nationality, or because this happened to the people, but I don't want to do that kind of art. I want to make pictures of beautiful flowers or butterflies and birds because that's my therapy. That's my reaction to it. So I think that what's most important is being true to what you want to do. Don't stop yourself from dealing with a certain topic because of what other people are going to think. And that brings us back to the very first earlier points about being true to yourself. You know,
And
there
one more
were,
point.
early 20th century, there were people. Oh yeah.
No, go ahead, finish. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
Terrence. Oh, I was just going to say a lot of early 20th century thinkers and artists would say, if you're a Black person, you need to be making art about this. And I would, I was doing abstract art myself back then, so that really bothered me. And if you're a Black person making art, and people, people need to see the diversity of all the things we want to talk about. There's a purpose for all of us. There's someone who needs to see, or else we wouldn't be put here with the heart to do it. It's in our heart for a reason. And we can evolve, Some of my artwork, although my intention, for instance, is to make art that's about personal development, I have made a couple of social justice pieces. I made a hybrid device that could protect. I was thinking about all the mothers whose children go out and get shot by cops, or who are afraid of their children getting shot by police officers when their children are doing nothing. So I made this cloaking device because it's like you wish you could do something. So I made an object that could do the thing I wish we could do, cloak and protect our children with, and it functions based on love. So that was the first hybrid device I made for an exhibition at UIC in 2016, I think it was, called Our Duty to Fight. And each artist, that was the most painful show. It wasn't painful for me, but it was a show that was steeped in pain because each artist was assigned to work with a mother and father or parent of someone who had been murdered by the police. And we had to talk with that parent, we had to meet them, and you want to make sure you're respecting them and honoring their child. So it felt like the most responsibility I'd ever had as an artist. And so I made a piece about that, and then I made a piece that was about the trauma passed down in history through this ancestral device, and about how some people are living with that trauma on top of their daily lives, the trauma that's passed down genetically. So yeah, you can be any kind of artist, and if something comes up, there might be a way for you to infuse it in your work. But I just say, let's not block ourselves. And if we do feel a fear, let's work on the fear. And if we start to say, oh, I don't want to do, pay attention to what you're tempted to dismiss in your work. But the most important thing, it's healthy for us to be true to ourselves, because how do you know that thing you're dismissing is not your total? I mean, and I'm assuming that we have purposes. There's a purpose for each of us being here. That's my basic assumption. So what if the very thing you're dismissing is exactly what you came here to do? So that's my thing. And to Terrence's point, bringing up the social justice. Yeah, some people think that's just people making protest art, but it is about healing. And I also have a lot of concern and have talked to a lot of activists about their need to heal. And sometimes artists getting together with activists is a really great way to bring some justice for all those people who are fighting for those of us who are doing other things. And so if artists can bring some healing to them, that's important. That matters. But number one, being true to the art that we came here to this art to make, because somebody needs to see it. Sometimes we might be the only person who needs to see it, but other times there'll be someone else who might see your work and you don't even know it, and it changes their lives.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but actually the main thing I was talking about is how that social justice and human rights art, so to speak, helps to heal other people, even without you knowing it. Of course, you're not going to know all the people that it affects. To give one example, I taught for many years in the school system, and I used to go to a lot of art events out in the community, and I said, wow, this is really powerful. And I invited those artists into the classroom, and I really had to say they were the real teachers, because they were really communicating the messages that I was trying to communicate as a teacher, or in my teaching, more than I was able to do. The students, the children latched on more to their messages, of course, and were able to relate or get the message. So mostly I hear what you're saying too about appreciating different types of art, but the point I was trying to make was the effects of that type of art on communities and societies, just reflecting on the situation that we're in right now, with COVID and the tumultuous amounts of racism that we see in the news and different things like that. So when I come together with artists, it's sort of the thing that I like to talk about, and how that type of message is inside of the art. Again, just referring to the times that we're in right now and what we're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's healing when, activists their whole role is to heal. I mean, society is wounded. Our whole society is wounded, and when an activist is fighting for justice for groups of people, it's an attempt to heal an entire community. It's a big job, and it takes generations. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of injustices that can't be, past injustices, ongoing injustices that can't be ignored anymore. They're magnified right now. So yes, thank you so much for those comments. And I see Hana has also made some comments. Did you want to speak on any of it, or are you just leaving it in the comments? Feel free to speak.
I was just writing about people. I think of Montilla and Shakespeare at different times. The bubonic plague was one. Some of the best work was done under very difficult conditions, but it forces you to go within and create. And although it can be an empowering as well as difficult time. Yeah.
Right. And if it lasts a long time, it can at first be like, okay, I've been running like crazy for years. I need a break, and I'm going to take a break. And then we might feel like, okay, now I can get back into making some artwork and being productive in some way. But sometimes being productive means I'm going to do some restorative justice for myself and my body, because I've been giving to so many people. Now it's time for me to balance that out and give to myself and restore myself. And then what do you do next? You turn around and start giving again as soon as you're able. Like, I am very grateful, for instance, that my workshop circuit didn't have to stop, because when I'm doing these workshops and connecting with people, I feel I am more entrenched in my purpose and what I came here to do than any other time. And it came through the pathway of being an artist. So that's another thing. When you're true to yourself, you find out, oh, I thought I was just making art, but no, the doors have opened, windows have opened, paths have opened to so many other things, just because you decided to say yes to some inner longing or inner urge. So a lot of people shut down their inner urges because, oh, I don't see how it can work out. I don't see the full picture, so I'm not going to take the first step. But every step reveals something new. And I had no idea that making art about healing and doing one journaling workshop with that very first show where I showed my first sculptures would lead to 5 years later continuing to do these workshops and even being brought in by organizations to talk to their people, having nothing to do with the fact that I had an artwork. But it's taking on a whole new life. And I love that. I love that I had no idea that this would become a bigger thing than just me doing little workshops at galleries in a circle of 5 people, And I appreciate people like Trisha for, like, with the Justice Hotel. Sanctuary Sundays was part of the Justice Hotel, which was a project that started a few years ago with Amanda Williams. And I'm thankful to Trisha for bringing in the piece that involves the human spirit, the individual healing and spiritual side, because it's holistic. Some people only focus on the justice that needs to happen in the outside world, but I'm here to say, well, you know what? You need some healing. How can we go out in the world and give our best when we are not taking care of ourselves? So the more we know ourselves, the more we heal and take care of ourselves, the better we can do, the better we can serve others when we go out there and communicate and connect with others. So I'm going to close it out in a couple moments, but I just wanted to leave a moment for any closing words. Anybody who wanted to make any other comments or suggestions to other people who brought other things up? Anybody have other suggestions for how we can ground and stay centered and deal with anxiety? Okay, thank you. If I didn't hear your voice or hear from you today, I still appreciated seeing the square with your avatar and your face or your name. Thank you so much. It means a lot that you're here, and I really appreciate it. Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you, Rhonda, because you're always and making and doing for others. So thank you very much.
So
and
are
thank
you,
for
Trisha. Trisha never takes a break. Trisha never takes a break. Thank you. Thank you all. Adios, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. That was really great.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll see you Friday, Sarah.
Yeah. And thank you, Trish. If that's your name, for putting things into the chat, sort of summing things up. That was really great to have that.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.